She had been buying the same carton of milk every Tuesday for 12 years. Same brand, same spot on the shelf. She never even looked at it anymore, just reached, grabbed, dropped it in the cart between the bananas and the bread. It was part of the routine the way brushing her teeth was part of the routine. The kind of choice that stops feeling like a choice because you made it so long ago you forgot there was ever a decision involved. Her name was Dolores, 67 years old, retired postal worker from Memphis. Type 2 diabetes for 4 years. She walked 3 mornings a week. She had cut out soda entirely. She measured her portions with a kitchen scale her daughter bought her for Christmas. And every single morning, her fasting glucose was higher than it should have been. Not dangerously high, just stubbornly, persistently elevated, in a way that made her feel like her body was ignoring everything she did.
She told me once, sitting in my office with her glucose log open on her lap, "I feel like I am fighting something I cannot see. I do everything right, and the numbers just do not care." I asked her one question: "What do you put in your coffee every morning?" She looked at me like I had asked her what color the sky was. "Milk," she said. "Just regular milk. It is not like I am pouring sugar in there." That one conversation changed her numbers within 2 weeks. And what I explained to her that afternoon is exactly what I am going to explain to you right now. I am Dr. George, and after years of working with folks managing blood sugar, metabolic health, and the daily frustrations that come with both, I can tell you something with complete confidence. Most people who are struggling with their glucose are not struggling because they lack discipline. They are struggling because the foods they trust the most are the ones nobody ever taught them to question. And milk is one of the biggest hidden examples of this pattern that I see over and over again. Now, before we go any further, I want to ask you something. What milk is in your refrigerator right now? Cow's milk? Oat? Almond? Something else entirely? Drop it in the comments, because I have a strong suspicion that a lot of you are going to name the same one. And that answer is going to make the next few minutes very personal for you. And if you are new here and you are already leaning forward in your chair, go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below right now. It does not cost you a red cent, and it means you will not miss a single week of this kind of honest, straight talk information. Now, let us get into it. Here is how I want you to think about what milk does inside your body. Picture your bloodstream as a 2-lane road through a small town. On a normal day, traffic moves through nice and steady, a few cars at a time. Your insulin, the traffic officer standing at the intersection, waves them through without breaking a sweat. Everything flows just fine. Now imagine somebody opens a gate and 100 cars flood onto that road all at once. The officer is completely overwhelmed. Traffic backs up every which way. Nothing moves. The whole system locks up. And if that flood happens twice a day, 3 times a day, every single day, the officer eventually stops being able to do the job at all. That is what high glycemic milk does to your blood sugar. Lactose, added sugars, and processed starches from certain milks rush into your bloodstream faster than your insulin can manage. And when that happens every morning, every afternoon, every evening, your body becomes progressively less responsive to insulin over time. That is insulin resistance. And it does not arrive because you ate a slice of cake at a birthday party. It arrives because of small, invisible, repeated floods that nobody ever flagged. Today, I am ranking the most common milks from worst to best for blood sugar after 60. We are starting with the ones that are quietly making diabetes harder to manage, and ending with the one option that the research consistently shows performs best for glucose stability. And it surprises just about everybody when I tell them what it is. Now, the worst options first, because I want you to see what you might be up against before we talk about what to replace it with. The most damaging category is not a single product. It is an entire shelf at your grocery store, dressed up in packaging that looks like it belongs in a health food commercial. Sweetened plant-based milks, sweetened almond milk, sweetened oat milk, sweetened coconut milk, vanilla flavored this, chocolate flavored that. The bottles have pictures of almonds and oats and green leaves on them. The words natural and plant-based are printed in soft, reassuring fonts. And buried on the back of every single one of them is a number that would stop most diabetics cold if they ever saw it. 8 grams of added sugar per serving, 10 grams, 12, sometimes 15. Multiply that across the 2 or 3 servings most folks use throughout a day, and you are looking at 25 to 40 grams of sugar that entered your bloodstream from something you genuinely believed was a healthy choice. Liquid sugar absorbs faster than solid food. There is nothing to slow it down. The spike is sharp, the crash is hard, and for someone already managing insulin resistance, that daily pattern compounds into measurably worse glucose control within weeks. The word you are looking for on every label from here on out is unsweetened. That one word changes the entire metabolic profile of the product. Without it, you are drinking something that may be doing more damage to your morning numbers than the dessert you turned down last night. Next, rice milk. This one is less common in most kitchens, but it shows up frequently in households managing allergies, and I understand why folks land on it. When you cannot tolerate dairy, cannot tolerate soy, and are leery about nuts, rice milk feels like the safe, neutral option. The trouble is that rice is one of the highest glycemic grains there is. When it is processed into liquid form, the speed at which it converts to blood glucose goes up because there is nothing left to slow digestion down. No meaningful protein, no meaningful fat, no fiber, just fast-absorbing carbohydrate in a glass. The glycemic index of rice milk sits above whole cow's milk and above most other alternatives. For a diabetic, it is not a safe default. It is one of the most disruptive options on the shelf. Now, the one that catches the most people flat-footed, the one that has been marketed so aggressively over the past several years that it has genuinely confused millions of people managing blood sugar: oat milk. Oat milk has a reputation problem, and the reputation is the opposite of the truth. The packaging says heart healthy. The branding feels responsible, modern, clean. Celebrities drink it. Coffee shops push it. It has become the milk that health-conscious folks reach for when they want to feel like they are making a good decision. But oats are a high-carbohydrate grain. When they are processed into liquid, the fiber that makes whole oats a tolerable food for some people is largely destroyed. What remains is fast-absorbing starch in drinkable form. Studies examining plant-based milk alternatives in people with type 2 diabetes found that oat milk produced significantly higher post-meal glucose spikes than several other options. Not slightly higher, meaningfully higher. The kind of higher that shows up in your fasting number the next morning and makes you scratch your head wondering what on earth you did wrong, when the answer was sitting right there in your refrigerator the whole time. Dolores was drinking oat milk. She had switched from whole cow's milk 2 years earlier because her daughter told her it was better for her heart. The daughter meant well. The advice was wrong. Not wrong in general, wrong for a diabetic. How many of you watching right now made that exact same switch in the last couple of years? Moved to oat milk because it seemed like the healthier choice? If that was you, I want to hear about it. Tell me in the comments what happened to your morning numbers after you made that change. Because I see this pattern so often that I already know what most of you are going to say. Last on the problem list, whole cow's milk. Now, this one is not the villain some folks make it out to be. It has protein, it has fat, it has calcium, but it also contains lactose, which is milk sugar, and a carbohydrate load that most diabetics genuinely do not account for. 1 glass in the coffee, another with cereal, maybe a third at dinner. By the end of the day, that is a meaningful amount of sugar your body had to process. And for a pancreas that is already working overtime, that daily lactose load is not free. It adds up in ways that never show on any food diary because most people simply do not think of milk as a source of carbohydrates. Now, I know that is a whole lot of bad news delivered all at once, but here is where things turn around. Because the options that actually help, the ones that support glucose stability instead of undermining it, are just as easy to find, cost about the same, and start making a measurable difference faster than most folks expect. And if you are finding this helpful, this would be a real good time to hit that subscribe button if you have not already. Every week, I come right back here with practical, research-backed information just like this. No fancy language, no nonsense, nothing to sell you, just the plain truth. Go ahead and subscribe, and I promise you will not regret it. The number one choice is not the one you think it is. And what happened to Dolores' fasting glucose 14 days after she made the switch is something I am going to share with you right now. The options that actually help your blood sugar share three things in common: low carbohydrate content per serving, minimal impact on insulin demand, and the ability to fit into your morning without creating the traffic jam we talked about earlier. They enter quietly, they do not flood. And for a pancreas that has been working double shifts for years, that daily relief is not a small thing. Unsweetened almond milk is the most widely available starting point. You can find it at Walmart, Kroger, Aldi, Dollar General, practically anywhere that sells groceries. A typical cup contains somewhere between 1 and 2 grams of total carbohydrates. Compare that to 12 or more in whole cow's milk, 14 or more in oat milk, and the difference is not subtle. It is night and day. For blood sugar specifically, unsweetened almond milk is close to invisible. It does not trigger the insulin surge. It does not create the post-breakfast crash. It does not generate that mid-morning fog that sends you reaching for something sweet by 10:30 because your body is trying to recover from what you poured into your coffee at 7. Two things to keep in mind. First, always look for the word unsweetened right on the front of the carton. For blood sugar specifically, unsweetened almond milk is close to invisible. It does not trigger the insulin surge. It does not create the post-breakfast crash. It does not generate that mid-morning fog that sends you reaching for something sweet by 10:30 because your body is trying to recover from what you poured into your coffee at 7. Two things to keep in mind. First, always look for the word unsweetened right on the front of the carton. The sweetened version of almond milk is an entirely different product with an entirely different impact on your glucose. They sit side by side on the same shelf, and the difference between them is the difference between medicine and the disease it is supposed to treat. Second, almond milk is lower in protein than cow's milk or soy milk. That means if you are using it as your go-to milk throughout the day, make sure your meals are carrying enough protein from other sources. Eggs, chicken, fish, Greek yogurt, whatever works best for you. The protein matters for reasons we will get to in just a moment. Now, for those of you who find almond milk too thin, too watery, not satisfying enough in your coffee or your morning oatmeal, there is another option that solves that problem without touching your blood sugar: unsweetened coconut milk. The drinkable kind from the refrigerated section, not the thick canned version you use in cooking. The beverage. Unsweetened drinkable coconut milk has a slightly richer, creamier texture that a lot of folks over 60 genuinely prefer. It feels more like real milk in the cup. And it carries roughly the same low carbohydrate load as almond milk, meaning your glucose barely registers that it is even there. There is something else worth knowing about coconut milk specifically. The fat it contains is primarily medium-chain triglycerides, which your body metabolizes differently from most dietary fats. Some research suggests these fats may modestly support insulin sensitivity rather than work against it. Now, I want to be careful here. I am not saying coconut milk reverses diabetes. That is not what the evidence says. What I am saying is that when you combine the low carbohydrate content with a fat profile that appears to work with your metabolism rather than against it, you get an option that earns its place on the better side of this list. Dolores tried almond milk first. She lasted 4 days. She told me it was like putting water in her coffee and pretending to enjoy it. Her exact words were, "Dr. George, I gave up soda, I gave up sweet tea, I gave up my mama's pound cake. I am not giving up the feeling of real milk in my morning cup." Fair enough. I told her to give the unsweetened coconut milk a try. She called me 3 days later and said, "Now that is something I can live with." And that matters. Because the best milk choice for your blood sugar is always the one you will actually stick with. If you cannot stand the taste, you will go right back to what you had before within a week. Sticking with it is not a bonus feature, it is the whole point. Now, we have arrived at the one I saved for last, the option that, when you look at the complete picture, not just carbohydrate content, but protein, satiety, glycemic impact, insulin response, and long-term research in people actually managing type 2 diabetes, rises above everything else on this list: unsweetened soy milk. I know that was probably not what you were expecting. Soy has been surrounded by controversy for years. You have heard things: hormones, thyroid, vague warnings passed around at the kitchen table and forwarded in emails with no sources attached. And I understand the hesitation, because when something has been questioned that loudly for that long, the caution feels reasonable. Now, we have arrived at the one I saved for last, the option that, when you look at the complete picture, not just carbohydrate content, but protein, satiety, glycemic impact, insulin response, and long-term research in people actually managing type 2 diabetes, rises above everything else on this list: unsweetened soy milk. I know, that was probably not what you were expecting. Soy has been surrounded by controversy for years. You have heard things: hormones, thyroid, vague warnings passed around at the kitchen table and forwarded in emails with no sources attached. And I understand the hesitation, because when something has been questioned that loudly for that long, the caution feels reasonable. So let me walk through this with you the way I walk through it with my patients. With evidence. Not opinion, not marketing. Evidence. Unsweetened soy milk contains roughly 7 to 8 grams of protein per cup. That is comparable to cow's milk and significantly higher than almond milk or coconut milk. That protein content is not a footnote. For a diabetic, it changes everything about what happens after you drink it. Protein slows the rate at which carbohydrates enter your bloodstream. It acts like a brake pedal on that highway we talked about. Instead of glucose flooding in all at once, it arrives gradually, giving your insulin time to manage the flow without getting overwhelmed. That slowing effect flattens the spike. It turns a sharp peak into a gentle hill. And for someone whose insulin system is already strained, that difference shows up in the numbers within days. Protein also keeps you full longer, and that matters more than most folks realize. One of the most destructive patterns in blood sugar management is the spike-crash-hunger cycle. You eat something that spikes your glucose, your body overcorrects, you crash. The crash makes you hungry. You eat again, usually something fast and carbohydrate heavy, because your body is hollering for fuel. And the cycle starts right back up again, higher each time, more insulin resistance building with every loop. A breakfast anchored by a milk that carries real protein breaks that cycle at the very first link. You feel satisfied. You do not crash at 10:30. You do not find yourself standing at the kitchen counter hunting for crackers at 11. Your glucose stays steadier through the morning, which sets a steadier tone through the afternoon, which means less chaos come dinner time. One choice at 7 in the morning, echoing through your entire metabolic day. Researchers who have studied post-meal glucose responses to different milk types in people with type 2 diabetes have found that unsweetened soy milk consistently produces a flatter, more controlled blood sugar curve than cow's milk, dramatically flatter than oat milk, and flatter than rice milk by a margin that is not even close. The glycemic index is lower, the insulin demand is lower, the satiety is higher. Now, the concerns. If you have a soy allergy, this is obviously not for you. If you have a thyroid condition, have a good sit down with your physician before making any changes. Those are real considerations for a small number of folks. But for the majority of adults over 60 without those specific issues, the large-scale, long-term research on moderate soy consumption does not back up the fears that have been circulating around kitchen tables and in forwarded emails for the past 20 years. Major health organizations have reviewed this data time and again, and the conclusion is consistent. Moderate soy intake is safe for most adults and may offer cardiovascular benefits, which matters enormously when you are managing diabetes because the two conditions share the same roads inside your body. Here is what I told Dolores, and I want to tell you the same thing because I think it captures everything this video is about. Your pancreas does not read labels. It does not care whether the carton says natural or plant-based or heart-healthy. It does not respond to packaging. It responds to what hits your bloodstream. And when you evaluate unsweetened soy milk purely on the basis of what it does to your blood sugar, it outperforms nearly everything else available. Dolores made the switch, not to soy milk because she preferred the coconut, and that was perfectly fine. The point was never to force one answer on everybody. The point was to move away from the option that was quietly making things worse and toward one that gave her body a chance to settle down and stabilize. 14 days later, she brought her glucose log back in. Her fasting numbers had dropped an average of 11 points. Not from a new medication, not from a new exercise program, from changing what she poured into her coffee every single morning. She stared at that log for a long time, and then she looked up at me and said, 12 years. 12 years I was making it harder on myself, and nobody said a single word. That is exactly why I made this video, because Dolores is not unusual. She is everywhere. She is watching right now. Here is what I want you to do this week. Go to your kitchen. Pick up the milk you are currently using. Turn it around. Find total carbohydrates and added sugars on the label. Write those numbers down. Then, the next time you are at the store, pick up a carton of unsweetened soy milk, or unsweetened almond milk, or unsweetened coconut milk, whichever one appeals to you, and compare those same numbers. The difference will be plain as day. Then run the experiment yourself. 14 days. One swap. Check your fasting glucose each morning. Notice how your energy feels after breakfast. Notice whether that 10:30 crash shows up, or whether, for the first time in a good long while, your morning just feels steady. Let your own body be the evidence. You have the glucometer, you have the experience. You do not need my permission to find out if this works. You just need 14 days and one different carton. I know some of you are thinking, this feels too small to matter. One milk swap for a condition as serious as diabetes. But I have watched this work for over 20 years. Small, repeated choices, the ones that happen automatically every morning without you even giving them a second thought, are exactly where the biggest leverage lives. 365 mornings a year. The right milk versus the wrong milk, compounded over a year, over 2 years, over 5. That is not small. That is the difference between numbers that keep climbing and numbers that finally hold still. Your body is not broken. Your diabetes is not a verdict on your discipline or your character. Most folks who struggle with their blood sugar were simply never taught what their morning milk was actually doing inside their body. Now you know, and knowing changes the math. Everything I have shared today is general educational information based on current medical research. It is not personal medical advice. Before making any dietary changes, please talk to your physician. They know your full history and your medications. That context always matters. Now, I have a question for you, and it is a real one. If you made this swap today, the milk in your coffee, the milk in your cereal, just that one thing, and your numbers actually dropped within 2 weeks, who is the first person you would call to tell about it? Picture that person right now. Your spouse, your sister, your best friend from church who complains about her numbers every Sunday after service. Maybe do not wait for your own results. Maybe go ahead and send them this video tonight. Because sometimes the most important thing you can give somebody you love is not advice. It is the information they did not know was missing. And if this is the kind of honest, practical, no-nonsense conversation about health that you have been looking for, the kind that treats you like a grown adult and does not waste your time, then I am asking you right now to subscribe to this channel. Hit that subscribe button, ring that bell, and come on back next week. Because I will be right here, same as always, with more of this. For as long as folks like Dolores need someone to explain what nobody else is bothering to explain, and I am not going anywhere.